Hello, friends. So just give me a second to set up because I did get some questions over on Yale Twitter and I screenshot them without looking at them too quickly. And I'm very excited to answer them. But hello. If you're here, you probably know who I am. I'm Kathy. Hello. Let me just see if everything is running clearly. Yes, there we go. Everybody's favorite part of a live stream is the beginning when the person's like, is it working? Please be working. And it is, which is great. So give me one moment. Yes, excellent. So hi, I'm doing this just because I felt like I wanted to. I haven't done a Q&A on my channel in a very, very long time, and just kind of figured that on this weird weather Wednesday. Why not? What better? For those of you who don't know, that I live on the west coast of Canada on an island, and my island isn't on fire, but a lot of the west coast of the North Americas is. So our sky is just completely covered in what looks like clouds, but is definitely smoke. So going outside is not a good thing. Even being inside, I've had a low brain headache for the last couple of days. So, you know, all the good fun times and all of those types of things. So I figured a way to just kind of cheer myself up, hang out with other people, is to do this Q&A. So I have some questions I'm going to go through. I tried to screenshot them from Twitter without looking at them because I always love when people flounder and don't know how to answer questions. So I wanted to provide that quality content for you. And then if you have any questions, put them in the comments and I am going to answer them as long as they're not, super gross or weird. I'm also going to drink a little bit of coffee. One second. I love this mug, this creative introvert mug. I find it adorable. So, all right, let's get into some questions, shall we? And like I said, oh, hi, Alex. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. All right, so Beck gave me my first questions. And also, by the way, I should mention that 24 hours ago, I was like, am I even going to have any questions? Because I don't know about you, but when I tweet, it feels like it just goes out into the void and very few people actually see it. So I was very concerned I wouldn't have any questions, and then some people started coming through. So very excited for it. All right. Beck's first question is, what are your top 3 favorite bands? I don't know how music works. I don't really listen to music. And I know that sounds like the weirdest thing in the world because who doesn't listen to music? But it's this girl. So, like, the best way for me to answer this is just hyping people I've seen once or twice, or smaller artists that I know. So, one person is Joey Clarkson. Joey Clarkson is a fantastic singer-songwriter who is from the island that I live on, but currently lives in the UK with her husband and her 2 very adorable Pomskis. To meet them so badly. I was actually supposed to go visit them back in April, and then obviously that didn't happen. So Joey Clarkson, number 1. Who else have I seen in concert? The most recent concert I went to was Weird Al, so let's go with that. And the duo I've probably seen in concert the most is Tegan and Sarah, because my best friend is a huge audiophile, loves Tegan and Sarah, so I've seen them in, I want to say, is it just 2 different countries? I think it's just 2 different countries, here and in Ireland, when we lived there together. So that's as close as discussing music is gonna go. I'm far more likely to know the lyrics to musicals than to just everyday music. Just saying. Because I was definitely a theater kid growing up. The next question was, what are your favorite and least favorite book genres? So the top 3 that I tend to read are contemporary, sci-fi, and fantasy. Those are always the top on my my reading spreadsheet. And yeah, I feel like that makes the most sense. I do read every other things here and there, but that makes the most sense to me. As for least favorite, I would probably have to go with, I don't tend to read a lot of religious fiction, things that are very heavy-handed in religious messages, although I'm going to talk about one a little bit later, weirdly enough. So like I will never discount a genre on a whole. Like I'd like to be able to say smut isn't my thing, but then I found some smut that I actually enjoyed. So yeah, I don't always connect with poetry. Poetry is a hard one for me, so that's probably down near the bottom. But I'll try almost anything, especially if it sounds like something I'm going to be interested in. I don't really care if it's in a weird genre. If it's going to be like bibliophilic, I'm going to want to read it. And the last question was your favorite non-reading hobby. Probably at this point has to do with playing VR games. I haven't played a lot recently, although last night we did play some Half-Life Alyx, which was wonderful. I was a spectator the whole time because we rigged it so that we could see on the TV what my roommate was seeing in the headset, which is way better than us trying to like cram around the computer and not get hit by my roommate while she's flailing because zombies. So that was fun. I haven't played in a very long time, mostly because when I redid my hair dye, I didn't want to get my hair dye all in the headset, and then I just fell out of practice of like waking up in the morning and playing Beat Saber. That's how I was getting my exercise for a while. So that's one. I definitely also enjoy like watching TV shows and movies and that type of thing, especially if I'm watching those things with somebody else. Like I have certain shows that I watch with one roommate, another show that I'm watching with just the boyfriend, another show that we all watch together. So it's that type of thing. On to the next. Ooh, Rebecca sent me questions. Okay, so question is, do you plan to get back into writing and would you want to do it professionally? I have been mulling over an idea for a little while, probably about a month. I think is when I had the idea that I would love to write, but it just comes down to me actually making the time to sit down and do it and pretend that it's a thing I could actually do and then breaking it down into the steps to make it a thing. That's really difficult. I've only ever completed one book. It exists. It's in the world. It was a NaNoWriMo project. And I would love to be able to say I did that again and then love to actually query people with it. Because when I wrote the previous book, I am not a very big sharer of my writing, besides what I've obviously put on YouTube. And it's always this very strange feeling of just being like, here's this thing that I made, and like, you're not going to get any better if you don't get feedback, that type of thing. But that was my first time I had really made something that I was like, other people might read this. And instead of like editing it and trying to make it any better than the 50,000 word minimum for NaNoWriMo, I basically lightly edited it. It had a couple of people read through it. There's still spelling mistakes in there, but I'm actually kind of okay with just the way that it is. And it was just like, well, I'm going to push it out into the world, and it's fine. So it's self-published. You can find it if you want to. And that was my first like push into like, okay, other people are going to see my creation. Other people, should they want to, could read this thing and know that it's by me instead of like anonymous live journals or whatever from my youth. So I would be interested in getting back into writing. I really need to like make a plan and actually follow through with it, which is the hardest part of starting anything. And then would I want to do it professionally? Heck yes. If I could be paid to like work with books and do book things, that would be great. That would be much better than my previous book jobs, which is mostly just like the lifting of books and the putting back on shelves of books. So yes, in short, absolutely. That would be great. Whether or not I will actually get the stuff together to make that happen is a completely different conversation. What book series would you erase from memory so you could experience for the first time again? Ooh. That's interesting because I'm coming to understand that I don't remember everything I've ever read. Like, for instance, I was going back to some of my videos from like 2 years ago and just adding some things to the descriptions. And I would look at the list of the things that I read, watched, and listened to and be like, I have no idea what that is, and I would have to go and look it up. Ooh, hello. That's okay, Rebecca. I'm actually answering your questions. So yes. And yes, you will write and brainstorm. Yes, that would be absolutely lovely. Thank you. Thank you for showing up, Rebecca. That is great. And it's totally fine that you can't stay long. I didn't know who was going to come to this. I fully knew it was going to feel like me just talking to myself in a room. So don't worry. But as for like erasing things, like there are several books that I'm like, oh, I vaguely remember what that is, or I'll hear the title and I'll go, I have no idea what that is, and then I'll look it up and be like, oh yeah, I did read that. So I don't know. I feel like the Song of Ice and Fire books would be an interesting one to do. Actually, the Dark Tower series would be really interesting to just have no knowledge of and do it all over again. It would probably make some really good vlog content, actually. But I read those so long ago that I've forgotten so much anyway that I could probably go back and be like, okay, yep, sure. Oh yeah, this thing happens. Cool. Like, and then what kind of horror novel would we be in together? Oh, Rebecca. Oh, I think that it would be one of those like comedic horror novels, almost like those horror comedies that you see like in movies, like Dale and Tucker Must Die or whatever that one was called. Those types of things where it's like random happenstance where these spooky things happen and like we don't even notice because we're too busy like drinking a backpack full of wine in the woods or something like that. I feel like that's the type of horror movie we'd be in. And it would be so good. I miss you so much, by the way. Like now I just want to actually be in a horror movie with you just because then I get to actually see your face. So there's that. Amanda also asked me some questions, and the first one is, what are some of your most anticipated releases for the rest of the year? Listen, what is time? I don't even know anymore. I don't even know what's coming out anymore. I feel like anything that immediately comes to mind is I have no idea when the release date is. So, like, Casey McQuiston's next book, Want It. I'm pretty sure it's sometime next year. Um, yeah, I don't know. This is the thing about not looking up the questions beforehand. Like, I would love to be able to have things off the top of my head, but I just don't. And that's not to say I'm not excited about things. That's just to say that, yeah, they will just fall right out of my brain, and I'll remember them as soon as this live stream is over. But there are definitely a lot of great queer and or own voices books coming out that I just want to read all of them, and I know I can't, but I'm gonna do my best. And yes, backpack wine and yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah. Now I kind of want to write this book. Rebecca, if you would like to write this book with me, please let me know because I think that it would be hecka great. Absolutely. Just saying, just throwing that out there. Amanda's next one is, do you have any books you could reread over and over and over again? And if so, which ones? There are very few books that I've read more than twice. Well, there's very few books I've read more than once, and then there are very even fewer that I've read more than twice. I feel like I could keep reading In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan over and over and over again and kind of want to make it like a yearly read because I love that book so much. The snark, the bisexuality, the gender roles. It's just so self-aware and so funny. So there's definitely that one. Words in Deep Blue, obviously, is kind of my brand. But I still even think I've only read that one twice. So I feel like I could probably reread that one. And it's just the comfort of the like the bibliophilic setting and people going through emotions. I like when people go through emotions in books. It's fun. Um, Ooh, yes, 100%, Rebecca. We can definitely collab. I'm going to send you an email about this after because I want to write this book with you. I think that would be really, really fun. So, yes. um, yeah, I can't think of other books that I've read more than once. Like, I just reread The Diviners, which I could probably reread that series a bunch of times over and over and over again. Um, other book? Oh, I've read Cemetery Boys twice. I'm going to reread that one because I'm on the the hold list for the audiobook at my library. So when that comes in like 2 months, that'll be the third time I've read that book this year. And yeah, there are definitely books that I could read over and over and over again. And I understand why people do that, like knowing what's going to happen and just that comfort of whatever drew you to the book in the first place. So bibliophilic setting or whatever you like in books, basically the tropes that you like, or if it's really steamy or whatever. So yeah, there are books. Can I name all of them? I think we know this about me that I can't. um, and then favorite and least favorite tropes in books is another question. And um, hate to love is always fun. Well, not always fun. I'm not going to say that it's always done well and it's always fun, but it is fun. I tend to like, or like friends to lovers. I'm definitely a fan of that as well. The the only thing that springs to mind with least favorite tropes is apparently like secret baby is a trope, and I'm like that. No, why? Why is that a thing? But also, like, I don't want to sit here and like yuck somebody else's yum, so I don't want to be like that's terrible. Um, but yeah, there are certain things every once in a while when I come across them that I'm like, this is not a thing for me. This is damaging or what for. But I try to read things I know I'm going to like, so I don't come across them very often. Do you have any book buzzwords? Bibliophilic, so anything set in and around a library or a bookstore or going on an adventure because of a book. All of those things. Absolutely love that. As for other buzzwords, let me think. She says, sorry for all the questions. I wanted questions, Amanda. Why would you say sorry for that? Um, Other buzzwords, queer, obviously. If it's queer, it's like an automatic. I'm going to look a little bit closer and see if it's something I want to read, which is usually yes. Oh. Um, it all depends. It depends who it depends on like what type of setting it is, what type of genre it is. Like, because I like adventure books, but that doesn't mean that I really want to read The Hobbit. I mean, I've read The Hobbit. It's fine. It's just not the language that I like to read. So I understand why people like the adventure of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, but like, it's just not my personal favorite. Let's see what else we have. Joshana has asked, how many different hair colors have you sported and which has been your fave? Probably the first time I dyed my hair a color that other than brown was when I bleached it in middle school. It was bleached for quite a while and then became a trend separate from me doing it. So I felt like I started it, but I really didn't start it. The next time after that was probably when I started dyeing it black, like every winter. I look great with black hair in the winter. Oh my God, I love it. But it's so hard to get out of your hair. So when I did try to get out of my hair, I tried to get Chad actually to bleach it, and that had interesting consequences. Mostly that it was bleached all in my roots, and then like the rest was kind of back to being brown, which was fine. Yay, back your hair. I will answer your other question after this hair question because I'm excited for questions. But I did yours at the beginning, so you'll have to rewatch to see the answers to your questions. Because you were the first one to give me questions. So you got yours answered first. I dyed it kind of purple after that to just cover up the bleach roots. And then other than that, it's been various various different purples and blues and unfortunate pink, which was hilarious because the label said purple. It was supposed to be purple. And that's actually the avatar for my channel is based on a picture from like the 2 or 3 months where my hair was like pink, even though it was supposed to be purple. And the avatar was actually drawn by Jen Wild, who you might know is a novelist. The Queens of Geek and the Brightsiders and Going Off Script and things she wrote previous to that as well that I haven't read yet, but I'm very excited for. But it's funny because I hate pink, and that's why I was like, why is my hair pink? But I didn't want to like immediately redo it. I wanted to give my hair a little bit of a chance. So yeah, so it's funny to me that my avatar is me with pink hair, even though that's the one I've liked My favorite is probably any of the purples. Like, actually, no, my favorite is probably the blue that was in the thumbnail for this. Actually, that was the best I have ever looked. But overall, I love purple. I love it so much. It's one of my two favorite colors. Yeah, purple is just a challenge. I've found also that blues, it feels like they wash out and like come off your hair onto like everything you touch for like a good month. And I'm like, but why blue? Why specifically this hue? Why does it do that? So I don't know. There's probably science. I don't know it. But I'm gonna go back. Where was your question that you asked? That's another question. What are you drinking and what's your go-to warm drink? So this is some day-old coffee that I decided, actually it might be 2-day-old coffee. It's whatever was in my French press, which would be coffee with some allspice and some cinnamon, just put right into the grounds and then French pressed, which means you're gonna get a little bit of it at the bottom, but I don't care. And then a coffee creamer that's like toffee, caramel, something else. Basically, it's as close as I can get to a pumpkin spice beverage in my house. And it's really good, actually. I've been making them hot, and like it smells so good in the house when I drink it. And then the other part of your question, what's your go-to warm drink? I like tea or I like coffee. If we're talking about like if I'm going to be fancy and I want to make something good, I love a hot toddy. I don't have them nearly as often as I would love to, but a hot toddy is whiskey and water and honey and lemon, and it's just so nice. I love it so much. So good. I might have one later, actually. Maybe I'll have one with my bath today. It's Wednesday. I could have a hot toddy in the bath. I'm in the process of moving, so I recently just picked up a bunch of Scotch bottles that have like this much left in them from my old place and brought them here, so I could definitely use one of those to make a hot toddy. Let's see. Hello, people are in the chat saying hi. Hello, hello, hello. Let's see. What's your favorite read of September so far? That is a good question. As soon as people ask me things like that, my brain goes completely blank. So let me switch over to my spreadsheet to remind me what I've read this month. I know that Perfectly Preventable Deaths was one of the things I read this month, and that was really fun. It was super atmospheric and just kind of dark and creepy, and then very interesting interpersonal dynamics between the characters. So that's definitely one. What else have I read this? The Roommate was just a delightful surprise. It just came out on Tuesday, but I read it over the weekend. I read it in like a day. And it's about this girl who moves across the country because she thinks she's finally going to get with this boy that she's been in love with since high school. And she gets there and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going away for the summer and I rented out my room to somebody else. And you find out within the first couple of chapters that that somebody else happens to be a porn star. So it's a raunch-com is what it's been called, and it was fantastic. Other than that, the best thing I've read, I haven't completed all of the things I've been reading this month. And I don't want to say The Diviners because it was a reread. Probably Darius the Great Deserves Better. I think is the best thing I've read so far in September. It's just really, really good. Like I just love the characters. I love the interpersonal dynamics. I love Darius just figuring stuff out. Like you get a lot of representation in one little book, and it was just fantastic. Let's see. I'm going to answer some more from the chat, and then I'm going to go back and forth to the questions that people asked before. So, Desiree, have you tried any of the color shampoos? I have not. I tend to not shampoo my hair very often. I tend to just use conditioner, to be honest, and then I try to use conditioner that's specifically for colored hair, and then I'll wash my hair every 3 weeks or so, probably, with, again, a shampoo that is supposed to be for colored hair, but it's not one of the ones that's like specifically for, like, I know that there's some people that have like purple shampoo for when they have purple hair and that type of thing, and I'm like, too lazy for that. I just want to put a little bit of shampoo in just to get like my roots and all of that not feeling gross anymore, and then move on with my life. I'm incredibly lazy when it comes to my hair. mostly because it will do whatever it wants, no matter what I do. So I might as well just let it do what it's going to do and save myself a lot of time. Ooh, this one hasn't been asked yet. So the favorite place that I've traveled to, my favorite place in the entire world, is Edinburgh, Scotland. I lived there for a year. I absolutely adored it. I was actually a tour guide while I lived there, so I learned a lot of the history. And there's still so much that I did not learn. But it's absolutely my favorite place on earth. Again, I was supposed to go there in April when I was visiting my friend in London. I was going to go up to Edinburgh for a few days, and I just am gutted that I didn't get to go. But eventually it will happen. But I'm not going to go until it's safe. I'm not strapping myself inside a tube and flying across the world in its current state. It's just not happening. Okay, perfect. So I think that's all the questions that were in the chat. So I'm going to go back to the questions that I had from Twitter. Shoshana asked another one, which was, if you had to literally quarantine alone for 2 weeks and could only have 2 books with you, which would you pick? Well, at this point, this is where you're going to want to take the long books. Like if I had never read The Stand before, that's when I would take The Stand because it's a doorstopper. I know Edinburgh is so perfect. It's definitely my favorite place on earth. I love the Edinburgh love. It's so beautiful. Henderson's closed. That makes me sad. But Edinburgh, beautiful. Yeah, so this is where we'd have to go with like, what are the longest books on my TBR? I'd probably take like a fantasy duology. I think that's probably what would happen. But they'd have to be like ones I knew I was going to love, and at the top of my head I can't think of anything. There is that I think it's just a duology that's based on Les Mis, and I've read the first book. I think it's called, oh, I can't remember what it's called. Well, that's bad, but it's like a fantasy retelling of Les Mis, and I've read the first book, and I think it's just a duology. So maybe I would do that so I could reread the first book and then read the second book because I haven't read that yet. I've only listened to the first one. Other than that, maybe just that's when I could sit down and like do a deep dive into the Carl's duology by Hank Green, because I've read both books a couple of times, but I would like to sit down and read them back to back and like tab my books. I even have special tabs I bought that like match the colors of the covers because I'm a dork. So I'm very, very excited about eventually doing that. They're currently sitting on my nightstand. I'm just waiting for a time that it feels like it's time to do that, basically. Let's see. Ooh, James asked me questions. I miss James. I met James at the first BookNet Fest I went to. So not last year, but the year before. And we were bullying him into coming again this year, and then this year didn't happen. So one day we will see each other again. What's some of your favorite books by trans and non-binary authors that you've read recently and would like to support? So obviously Cemetery Boys. There's no way I could be on this live stream with the possibility of Audrey being anywhere in the comments and not say Cemetery Boys first, because I love it so much. Felix Ever After was a complete surprise to me because the first couple of books I read by Case and Callender just weren't my thing. So I didn't expect to like 100% love this one, although I should have, because there was nothing in the synopsis of this one that lent itself to magical realism, which is the thing I'm kind of meh about, and the thing that was kind of meh for me about their other books. But Felix Ever After is amazing. Let's see. Obviously, I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deepers. Amazing. I recently read Each of Us a Desert by Marco Shiro, and even though that one is also kind of magical realism, fabulism-ish fantasy elements to it, I really enjoyed reading that. And it was different because their first book was just straight up contemporary, and this was fantasy, so that was cool to see. And then obviously there's so many others, like Our Bloody Pearl by Deanne Bryn is about mermaids and sirens, and there's like ace rep and there's non-binary rep, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, and just really, really good. Peter Darling by S.A. Chant, who recently changed their name. I found out when I posted my picture the other day, because I did a trans stack the other day, I found out that they've recently changed their name. So yes, uh, yeah, there are so many, and then of course there's like I'd love to be able to show just like a picture of all the ones I've read recently, but I obviously don't own them, so there's so many. There's so many. But those are just to start you off on your reading. Desert island scenario. You can have sorry desert island scenario. You can have unlimited bottles of only one wine. What are you bringing? um, I am bringing whatever red is available. I I'm super not picky. And the funniest thing about living here with my current roommate is like we love our fine scotch or our fine liquors and stuff like that. But when it comes to wine, we just like wine. So we've been doing you brew wines where like you put on a batch of wine and they'll call you and be like, it's done, come bottle it, and you bottle it yourself, and then you have 30 bottles of wine for like $150 or something like that. And yeah, we're super not picky when it comes to our wine. So just red. Red is my only answer to that. Probably like a Merlot or a Cab Sav or a Shiraz. Like super not picky. Although if this desert island is super warm and has somewhere to chill it, a rosé would be preferable just because I'm gonna want to cool down. But overall, red wine is my only answer to that. And then what's something you've been cooking a lot recently? Since I'm in the process of moving all of the things I own to one place instead of being in this bridge between two places, I brought over my food processor and I've been making like a vegan mac and cheese sauce out of cashews and almond milk and nutritional yeast and some spices. I've made that a couple of times. I keep wanting to like perfect this recipe because it's not perfect. There's something about it I don't like, and I don't know what it is. I like it as a whole, but like there's something about it that could be better. So there's that. Also, now that I have the food processor, as soon as we're out of the hummus that I have in the fridge, because there's one more pack of hummus because I eat so much hummus, I'm going to start making my own because we bought a bunch of chickpeas. I finally found tahini, which was hard to find for some reason. What else have I been making? Like my roommate makes amazing things. She loves to cook. So like we've made pizza on the barbecue. She made some really great pull apart like garlic bread. There was that one night that we spent like 6 hours making ravioli, which was amazing. And I think I've convinced her that we're going to make some vegan lentil pies come like the colder times. So like what would be meat pies in the UK, but with lentils and stuff like that in, and like making our own pie pastry and like just the little ones that like you make them in like a cupcake tray. So I'm very excited for that. I'm also very excited for when it gets a little bit cooler because it's still like 23 degrees Celsius out, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. You're going to figure it yourself, friends. It's still too warm to start making chili, but as soon as we get to a little bit cooler, it's going to be vegan chili time all the time because I love vegan chili. Allison asked, what is your go-to tea or your coffee order? Just black coffee is what I will order anywhere I go, basically. I do occasionally like to have the fancy things. So like I'll have a pumpkin spice latte, if if the mood strikes, that type of thing, because I just love the kind of the fall tradition of it. I also really like frappuccinos, but I never have like I spent a year working outside of a Starbucks because the start point for our tours in Edinburgh is just across from the Starbucks on High Street, on the Royal Mile rather, and every time I went in for coffee, I would always be like, I don't remember what the sizes mean. I don't remember what I want. Like I would honestly go in and be like, look, here's what I need in a beverage. I need it to be cold and I need there to be chocolate and there needs to be caffeine. Make me whatever that is. And they would humor me every time. And I thanked them so profusely because if it got to the point where I was going in to get coffee, I just needed the caffeine, to be honest. I was tired from walking around all day and my brain wasn't working anymore. So that's what it would be. All-time favorite villain. That is an interesting question because it can be taken in so many different ways. Like Ursula is a fantastic villain because she is based on a drag queen and is just generally interesting. And I've read a couple of books with like her backstory, or one that comes to mind with her backstory, and just how fascinating that could be. And at the end of the day, she's a businesswoman, but then it seems like she's actually evil. And so definitely Ursula. Ursula's up there. Who else can I think of off the top of my head? Because like there are villains that are like anti-heroes. There are villains that are just evil for evil's sake, and I don't think I ever really love those ones because you're really not supposed to. I'm gonna have to think more on this one and maybe come back to it. If you had a time machine, where would you go? I think you mean when would I go and why? Um, I am one of those people that's like, I'm gonna fuck everything up if I go in a time machine. Like, if it's the type of time machine where you can just go and see things and not actually like have a body that can influence what's happening, it would be interesting to go to so many places, although it would be hard because you're there and you can't influence anything that's happening. So like it would be really interesting to like go see historical figures do their things, like go to an original showing of one of Shakespeare's plays in the Globe Theater. That would be really darn cool. It would also be super freaking weird, which is why I want to do it in a way where I don't have like a corporeal form that can be harmed. Um, there's also like something in wanting to go to the future and see if the future exists. That went really dark, but yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, Outlander. And yeah, Outlander is definitely a tome. I'm in the minority in that, like, I read the first book and didn't really like it. Like, I liked the concept well enough, but the whole thing with Jamie, like, having to beat her because that's what society says, I'm like, no, I don't want this. I don't want it in my life anymore. Anyway, um, and that was years ago before there was a TV show. Where was the next question? If you could have any. Oh, okay. If you could have any coming up new release book in your hands right now, what would it be? Like if it could just magically be here. Ooh. Again, I'm like, what's even coming out? Let's just go with Casey McQuestion's next book because I want it. I just want it. Anything they write, I want it. Zoe and Carter, because that's what she puts in her bio, and it's adorable, and I love it. I miss her face. Would you ever move away from the West Coast? Yes, I definitely would. Like as far as Canada goes, because we have wonderful weather, which is why I enjoy being here. That being said, it's super expensive to live here. I realized a while back that like I could buy a house on the East Coast for like $25,000, and no, you can buy like nothing here for $25,000. You can buy like a trailer, but not have anywhere to put it. And it'd be like a really dilapidated trailer. That's about it. Yeah, houses here like $600,000, probably the lowest you would pay for a house here, which is just, and that's like not a good house necessarily. It's some of them are good. Like the one I'm in, I'm pretty sure is around that or slightly more, and it's great. I like it. But yeah, so yes, moving away from here. Yes, I definitely would. I love traveling. Like I said, I've lived in a couple of different places. I've lived in Ireland and I've lived in Scotland. I've lived on the East Coast when I was a kid. I was born in the middle of the country. So yeah, given the right circumstance, I would definitely move away from the West Coast, especially if it's like for a cool adventure or something like that. Least favorite genre, as I said, I'll basically try anything. There's no genre that I absolutely hate, probably because I haven't read a lot of the genres I don't tend to like because I try to read things I like. Weird, I know. If you could trade places with a character, who would it be? It'd be interesting to trade places with someone but still like retain their knowledge of that world. So like it would be interesting to see what it's like to be a surgeon, but like trade places and still have the knowledge so I don't like mess up the health of this character I'm sawing into. So yeah, anyone with like a really cool job would be awesome. Like a skydiving instructor. I can't think of any book literally that has a skydiving instructor in it. Hmm. 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 I like how I look around. I'm like, what books are near me? So I can figure out, like, it'd be interesting to go into a world that has magic as long as I understood how the magic works. And, like, the thing about this question is, like, am I just going into the book and living in that character and seeing everything firsthand instead of reading it? Is that the type of going in and trading with the character? Is that character now in my life and possibly messing things up for me? Like, I have too many questions to answer this in a concise manner. What kind of dinosaur would you be and why? I mean, I do have these tiny little legs, which makes me think a T-Rex, but that's tiny little arms, so maybe not that. Um, I don't know. There's one that was discovered in the Comox Valley, which is just up island of here, which is where I used to live in my teen years. So maybe whatever that one is called. Can't remember what that one is called. And then like a Triceratops, they're pretty badass. I like them. Also, it took me until I was an adult to realize that Sarah, the Triceratops from the Land Before Time, was called that because of that. And yeah. And then, what's the best animal and why is it a giraffe? Well, it's a giraffe because that is what you think the best animal is, Zoe. I also really like uh, octopi. Octopi are cool. Owls. Owls are also very cool. I feel like there's so many different cool creatures on our planet that like do very interesting things that I have no idea about. Like honeybees do like a little dance to show people where the best pollen is. Like there's so many cool little things that creatures on our world do. The gross thing about octopi, I just remembered a weird fact about octopuses. Octopuses actually put one of their tentacles inside the other one, like into their head, basically, when they're mating, and it's weird and gross. Look up an infographic of it sometime. It's something. Next, Isaboo has asked, "What is your favorite moment of 2020?" Uh, well, coming out here with the hard questions, because it's been a time. Time means nothing. Um, hmm. You know, I honestly don't know. I don't think there's been like a singular moment that has been like, this is the best thing, but something I definitely appreciated over the course of this year is quarantine pages, which is me and my friends getting together every day of the week and just reading a book, silent reading hour together, and then talking about our books. I think that that sense of community is probably the essence of my favorite things that have happened in 2020. Um, Especially because before this year, I wouldn't have done things like this live Q&A. I wouldn't have done my reading hours on Fridays because I kind of figured that like nobody cares or that type of thing. Like who wants to watch that content? And it's great that some of you are watching that content. That's absolutely lovely that you're here, but I think that some of it is also for me. It's definitely also for me. Um, ooh, I like this question. So since you lived in Ireland, are there any places you recommend visiting? I'm planning on traveling there when possible, yes. So Dublin is where I lived. I lived on the south side, and I lived on the south side. So I don't know too much about the north side besides like the things that are in the city center area. Um, what can I say about Dublin and Ireland? I mean, I also, if you have a chance to like go down to County Cork or up to Galway, actually is absolutely beautiful. It was interesting because the company that I used to get my visa to go there, I entered a raffle through them and won a bus tour. So I ended up going like across the country, down and back, which was very nice. So if you have a chance while you're in Ireland, it is such a small country that like going on one of those like 5-day bus tours, you do get to see so much of the country and it's beautiful. There was a point during that trip that was that the no, that was a different bus tour. There was a point during that trip where I got as close as I could to the Atlantic Ocean, which had been the first time I'd been near the Atlantic Ocean since I was 12, and at this point I think I was 21. And it was as close as I was going to be to Canada in like 2 years. So I sat as close as I could get because I couldn't actually get down to the water, and sang "Oh Canada," which was weird because it's not like I was particularly homesick. It's not like I'm particularly patriotic, but I thought that like since this is the most western point in Europe, I might as well. So that was an interesting thing. Um, yeah, I would say definitely go up to Galway. Like go to any of the interesting locations, find a random pub, and just sit down and just soak it in. That's what I feel is the best thing about Ireland, especially going to like the smaller areas. I just really adored that about there. I didn't get to see as much as I wanted to while I lived there because I was sick for 7 out of the 12 months that I lived there. I think I'm legitimately allergic to Dublin, or at least rather a mold that is in Dublin. So I didn't get to travel around the country as much as I wanted to, but what I did get to see was absolutely gorgeous. Um, what kind of reading do you want to do for the end of the year? So I'm really enjoying doing Game-a-thon. It had some fun prompts, and I loved going through and trying to find out like these different um, going through these different rooms and finding the different prompts and that type of thing. I really want to read a bunch of spooky stuff, obviously, coming up next month. And I'm going to have to like sit down and figure out what's available, what I can get, because obviously restrictions from the library, taking a look at what I already own now that most of my books are in one place. I might get into reading Nancy Drews again now that all my Nancy Drews are here because I have like 50 of the really old, like not glossy yellow hardcover Nancy Drews, so I might finally do that again. And then obviously, Queerlit Readathon not only is coming up for the weekend edition in a couple of weekends, but we have the 6th round at the end of the year, so obviously a bunch more queer. I can never like plan my reading too much in advance. Like I know I want to read spooky stuff. Do I know what that spooky stuff is going to be? No, but I know that I want to make the most out of Triple October because might as well. If there's going to be a year where you just pretend that it's October for 3 months, it's going to be 2020. Ooh, my favorite spooky book. So favorites are hard because even though like it's a subjective thing, I'm always feeling like I'm gonna say the wrong thing, or I'm going to say one thing and then decide that I was wrong. um, so, like I said earlier, Perfectly Preventable Deaths by Deirdre Sullivan is one that I've read this month, and it's spooky and atmospheric and creepy, and I liked it. I liked kind of the spooky atmosphere in The Lost Coast by Amy Rose Capetto, which I also read recently. I don't know if I have any, like, if we're talking about go-to, like, creepy books that I would read over and over and over again. I don't know that I necessarily have one, but would be super interested in, like, acquiring one. So if anyone has any recommendations for super spooky books, I want them. um, but yeah, I don't have one that like super comes to mind. Like obviously I read a lot of Stephen King when I was a kid. So and I do mean a kid, like I was reading his stuff when I was 12 or whatever. So there's obviously that. But like I'd love to branch out into other horror not written by cis white dudes. Although he hasn't been the worst one. So there's that. Favorite poets or poetry collections? I do not read a lot of poetry. It's just really not my thing. I know that I've enjoyed some of Jen Campbell's poetry. Jen Campbell is just a wonderful human being, just on the whole. So I know I've enjoyed some of her poetry and short stories, and her YouTube channel I've been watching for years. But yeah, I don't read enough poetry and like really super enjoy enough poetry to give many suggestions. The only collection that I own and I know that I really enjoyed the experience of it was Come Close by Sappho, which I got as a present from my friend Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts, and actually took with me on a trip last year on the way to BookNet Fest. And on the way to BookNet Fest, because there was hurricanes happening, I had a 24-hour layover in Denver. So because I knew that was going to happen, I booked a hotel. So I was able to like leave the airport, go to the hotel, basically just like went out and got some snack food and that type of stuff. I believe it was also a Wednesday. It was also a Wednesday. So I had my bath that I have every Wednesday at the hotel in the bathtub and sat there drinking Mike's Hard Lemonade and reading Sappho out loud to myself in the bathtub in this random airport or this random hotel in Denver, Colorado, which I'd never been to before. So that was exciting mostly because of the experience and not necessarily because I understand poetry. I mean, I understand it to a degree, but it's one of those things that I'm always like, I'm sure there's tons of things that I'm missing about it. Oh well. And then let's see what else. Ooh, she also asked, "How tall are you?" I'm short. I am 5'2" and 13/16 the last time somebody measured me, which was many years ago, so that could have changed slightly. But yeah, I'm little. One of my favorite things about meeting my friends from the internet is just like the first time you go to hug and you're like, "You're real tall, you're real short, or you're taller than I thought you would be," or those types of things, because you're used to seeing people at basically face level, and people are not the same height as me. Not at all. I mean, some people are. Some people are shorter. Like, I was surprised at how short Jashana was. I was like, wow, a human shorter than me. This is cool. And then, like, Audrey's real tall. So, like, it's fun. I like that a lot. Um, Another person asking, what's your favorite dinosaur? I mean, classic T Rex, Velociraptor. Now that we know that they look like chickens, that makes them even better. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Velociraptors just because we now know they basically looked like chickens. That is my answer. If you could live in a book world, which one would you choose and why? I would probably still want to live in a contemporary world, but a contemporary world where things are a little bit better. So maybe red, white, and royal blue. It all depends because, like, I have no idea what life is like in Canada in that world because that's not part of that book. Would I still be Canadian in that book world? Like, this is my problem with these hypothetical questions is I have so many follow-up questions before I can like pinpoint exactly what I would want. But yeah, it would probably be a contemporary world unless there was a magic system that I knew I could benefit from using and knew that I would be able to use, and it wasn't like a super sketchy time frame to live in. Samantha Leanne has asked, "What's your favorite required reading that you read while you were in school?" I mean, did anyone like the required reading in school? I don't remember if I ever did. Um, I mean, reading some of the Shakespeare was fine, mostly because I was a big theater dork, so I liked doing that, even though I really don't understand the text very often, and like I have to read it over and over and over again and have things explained to me sometimes. Um, which is why Shakespeare should always be watched, not read. It's so much easier to understand when there's actors interpreting the text. Is there anything I read that I really liked? I'm trying to think. High school was a long time ago. Just saying. Um, I mean, in the first year of university, we had to read Life of Pi. I remembered I actually had read that prior to. That was actually the first audiobook I ever listened to. And I listened, well, besides the ones I listened to when I was a kid, because there were like those ones with the cassette tapes that come with the books type of thing. But the first one I listened to as like a fully formed human being was Life of Pi. And I listened to it from the library on my Discman while I was walking home from work because I used to work graveyard shifts, and there was a period where I didn't have a car for like a month, so I would have to like walk home for an hour at 6 o'clock in the morning, and yeah, definitely listen to Life of Pi while doing that. So we'll go with that one. Why not? Even though I didn't read that one for school and ended up reading it the next year for school, we'll go with that one. I found that one interesting. I, however, tried to read what was the other one? High Mountains of Portugal by Jan Martel. Could not get into it. Not at all. What series, duology, trilogy do you feel would have been better as a standalone? That's always hard because if you're making it a standalone, it's like condensing everything to like a tome that I might not have read in the first place because super big books are really, really intimidating. My other problem is there are many series I have started but not finished. So the answer probably lies in one of those. I don't know. Maybe if we had. Actually, I'm not saying it would be better because that's a lie, probably. But a series that I think would make a good movie and just like one movie for the entire series, depending on how they did it, obviously, would be the Folk of the Air series, the Cruel Prince dual or trilogy by Holly Black. I think that that one could be done really well. Actually, now that I'm thinking Holly Black, her previous series, the one that's like Tithe something ironclad iron something ironside, that one, the one that starts with Tithe, that one would be way better as one standalone. Actually, I'm very glad I got around to an answer on that one because yeah, the second book in that just didn't need to happen. Yeah. I was just recently reminded of that series and it was very weird. What author do you want to interview the most? Ooh, that's an interesting question because there's definitely tons that I would be more than willing to interview. Um, but to interview the most, I mean, I just love talking to people about books. So, like, I don't know if there's one that, like, top of my list. Like, because I mentioned them previously in this Why Not Casey McQuiston. That would be very cool if I did, like, an hour-long chat with them. Jen Wild, actually, I think would be lovely to interview. Um, and we do have a little bit of a rapport, so that would be really, really fun. Yeah, there are tons of authors that I would absolutely love to review, but there or not review, interview. Um, but I just haven't really reached out to many people unless there's somebody that I feel like it's probably going to be a yes, which is why I asked George if he wanted to do an interview because like we already sort of knew each other. We're actually doing a buddy read right now, so like if uh, if I could figure out how to like approach people for interviews, there's definitely a bunch I would love to. Whether or not anyone would get back to me, I don't know. Do I like dealing with rejection? Not really. This question is from my best friend and it came via Instagram. And it's what's the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? She is a dork. That's a Monty Python reference. I'm a dork because I think I looked it up at some point and I think it's 10 meters per second is the actual answer. Just gonna move right past that. Thanks for that, Taryn. And somebody else asked, what is my favorite middle grade book? Probably a toss up between any of the middle grade books from Ashley Herring Blake. I really like Ivy Aberdeen. I really like Sunny St. James. Those are both great books. Trying to think if there's any others that like immediately come to mind because I do read occasional middle grade, but I don't. None of them are like smacking me in the face with their please talk about me ness. And then, oh no, those are pictures of bourbon. That's my roommate dancing in virtual reality. Okay, here we go. What is the first book that you remember changing you? Ooh. Ooh. So here's the thing, and I don't think I'm completely alone in this, although it is sort of weird. I don't really remember anything before about age 10. I don't know if I just have like a certain amount of memory and like anything before then has just been like relegated to useless crap and like rewritten in my brain. Not rewritten, but like written over, like with memories on computers. So I know that I probably absolutely cried and raged and was happy over several books as a child because I've always been bibliophilic. But that makes it really hard to come up with like a first book that really ever changed me. I read a lot of Nancy Drew as a kid, but because it's been so long, I can't separate out the different ones, which is why I want to eventually reread it. Although I don't have every one of them. That's probably another reason I haven't done it, is I don't have all of them, and I would love to read all of them in order, like an absolute nerd. So we'll see if and when that starts. If you could travel to any other planet in the galaxy or any time in Earth's history, would you travel in space or time? I mean, technically, no matter which one of those you do, you're traveling in space or time. But I understand the question. Again, it's like, am I going to be safe on these things is like my top priority. Am I going to survive this? What's it going to be? It'd be cool to like see the surface of Mars, but only if it was safe. And then as for time frames, again, like it'd be cool to go back and like watch a Shakespeare show at the Globe, but only if it was safe. And I don't know why I specifically pick Shakespeare. Like there's obviously other theatrical events that would be way cooler. And it always gets weird when it's like anything within recent history. Like I wouldn't want to go back and basically see the lives of people that are currently living, if that makes any sense. Like I wouldn't want to go back and see what like Leonardo DiCaprio was like as a teenager. Like anything, any answer like that, super weird to me. Yeah. What is something that makes you extremely happy for no reason, book or non-book related? Pictures of kittens, definitely pictures of kittens, or just like videos of kittens mewing for a minute. That happened the other day. My roommate just played one of those, and Chad came upstairs being like, "Is there a kitten here?" Um, yeah, kittens definitely do that, or boomple snoots, aka bunny rabbits. Um, yeah, just seeing any form of wildlife out of the blue will do that for me. So I guess animals on a whole, as long as they're not dangerous and trying to attack me, generally do the extremely happy. Like we see a dog walking outside and we get excited about it. Like dorks. Um, Other things. Basically anything's just like really cute, like stereotypically cute. I love it. I'm trying to think of yeah, yeah, I can't think of anything specific. But yeah, anything that's like you look at it and you're like, that's adorable, that will make me just super happy. And I don't know how to turn that off. Why would I turn that off? I don't know where I was going with that sentence because that was not good. Somebody else asked, favorite mythological creature. Uh, Mermaids are cool, I guess. I have questions about like, do they just live underwater? Do they have gills? Do they have to come to the surface? Are we messing up with them? Are they actually nice? Are they like sirens? Like, I have way too many questions. I'm trying to think of like Pegasus is cool because flying and riding, that would be awesome. I don't understand the appeal in unicorns because it's just a horse with a horn. I guess they're magical. That's probably the appeal. Um, I guess any like goblin type creatures, as long as they're not nefarious. Although, depending on if they're being nefarious for like my own personal gain, that could make a difference. Who knows? Yeah. And then like I always have the questions of like, how did they come to be? Did we have something to do with it? Because humans always think we had things to do with it. Or dancing roommate. Okay. First book you ever remember reading. So I don't remember personally doing this, as previously discussed. I don't have a memory. But the first book that it looked like I could read that was like a proper book was a Cinderella book. And I would sit on the front steps of my grandparents' house in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I would open the book and I would read every single word out loud and flip the pages at the right times. And my parents, like, I was really little at this point. I don't know how old, but I was very little. And they were just like, she shouldn't be able to read that yet. Like, that's not no, what is happening? And they eventually figured out that I had just memorized the entire book and like knew where the page turns were, and I couldn't actually read the words yet. Um, but I just love that story because I love knowing that I've always loved books. Like, I love knowing that about myself, even though I have a crap memory and I don't really know anything. What are 3 books you would Frankenstein together to make a new perfect book? Ooh, okay. Oh my goodness, there's so many options. Um, hmm, hmm. It's one of those questions where I really wish I had looked up my questions ahead of time. But I don't know. As soon as it's a Frankenstein, I'm like, well, I kind of want that gothic atmosphere. So let's go with like a kind of gothic-y atmosphere, like in Frankenstein. But let's give it the banter and characters of, say, Radio Silence, or literally anything by Alice Oseman, because her banter is so good. And add in, trying to think of a fantasy element to add in because that would be really cool. Let's do like Darker Shade of Magic. I've only read the first book in that series, but like if we've got the gothic kind of setting with the banter of Alice Oseman books and the fantasy magic traveling between worlds thing of Darker Shade of Magic, I think that would be badass. It probably wouldn't be perfect, but it would be badass. I would read it. I'd read the hell out of that. Since it's almost the season for it, a favorite Halloween costume you've ever worn if you do Halloween? So I want to say for like 4 years, I was an octopus because my mom made me a badass octopus costume, and I thought it was great, and I wore it for many years. I also made myself an M&M costume. I was a yellow M&M one year. My mom made me a blue crayon costume that was really badass one year. I made my brother a Dracula cape one year. I think that still exists. I actually used that Dracula cape as part of my Frankenfurter costume when I dressed up as Frankenfurter. It's probably 17 or 18. Yeah, 17 or 18, and I was working at a fast food establishment, and we were told that we could dress up for Halloween, and I said, were there any rules? And they said no, so I dressed up as Frankenfurter. So tiny shorts, bustier, pearls, cape, fishnets, high heels, everything, my hair, makeup, all of that. And then the next year there was a rule. So yeah. Oh, somebody's asking if I got to go to Scotland this year. No, I did not. I was supposed to, but that was in April, and that was definitely not a time that I was going to be traveling. It's interesting because I booked all of my international travel in January. Like, it was January 14th, and I had already booked my trip to the UK. That was supposed to be in April, and I had already booked my trip to the East Coast for BookNet Fest, which was supposed to be last month. And I had already booked everything that I was going to be doing this year, by January 14th, and had to cancel all of it, which was really unfortunate. Ooh, I like hearing this. Memorizing the whole of Little Red Riding Hood. Yeah. Apparently this isn't uncommon, especially with like shorter books or with like things that rhyme or whatever, and like knowing when the pages turn. I love little stories like that. They're wonderful. Also, the next year at that fast food establishment, I worked the graveyard shift, and I was dressed as a pirate with a full beard that my friend had like glued on with spirit gum, and it really confused people in the drive-through because they'd hear me over the radio thing taking their order, and they'd get to the window and they were very confused about gender, like most people usually are. And then the last question of from Kelsey is go-to pizza toppings. Most recently, like the ones that we were making on the barbecue a little while ago, I think I had some mushrooms and some pineapple, probably some green pepper. I also like tomatoes on there. I also really like if you can get like a good pesto sauce for your base, because I love me some pesto sauce. I'm also a really big fan of like using like a vegan ranch or Caesar type of dressing as your base. That's always really, really tasty. That's something I used to do before I even stopped having dairy and eating animals, just because I really, really liked it. But yeah, those are my go-to, I think. Nothing too fancy. If you could live in a fictional book world, what would it be? As we've already discussed, I have too many questions to pick one. If you could make any book required reading, which book would it be? Off the top of my head, I don't know, but it would definitely be queer. And off the top of my head, it would probably have to be Cemetery Boys or Felix Ever After, or any of these new releases that are really great contemporaries that I think are going to age really well and have really important themes. Actually, Darius the Great Deserves Better would also be great for this, except for the fact that it is a sequel. You don't have to have read the first one, but that's one of those you don't have to have read it, but you really should. So yeah, if you could make a duology required reading, that would be a good one, because there's so much fantastic representation and discussion, especially in the second book. That it exists in the first book, but because the second book is more fresh in my mind, that would make sense. And what's the last book that made you laugh out loud? That's a good question. Let's look at my spreadsheet because my memory sucks. Not that. I probably laughed out loud reading You Should See Me in a Crown. I can't think of the exact moment that it happened, but just looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I probably definitely did. Yeah, there are a few parts in that that I definitely laughed at. I probably also laughed at Only Mostly Devastated, which is a male Grease retelling. There were definitely points in that I laughed at. Again, I can never think of like the exact moment, but I just think of the book. I'm like, yes, that one was funny. Can't tell you exactly what made me do it, but there was laughter. And then Shailene asked, what has been your favorite book written by a Canadian author and why? And this is because this was a question that was its own question, just like one question in a tweet. I did end up like reading it before I took the screen capture, because I tried to take all the screen captures without reading the question. And I had this like panic since yesterday when I screen capped it of like, oh no, how do I pick the best Canadian book, the one, because I get very fixated on that. And when it comes down to it, like I can mention literally any Canadian book. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. So I picked mine more based on the experience I had with the book and not necessarily that like, if you're going to only read one book from Canada, it better be this one. So I actually picked it off my shelf because I went downstairs like 10 minutes before this started being like, I know where this is. Where is this? I can bring it up. So the one I picked is called The Right of James Biddle by Andrew Bailey, who is local to my area, actually. We've done theater together before. And the reason I picked this one, and like I mentioned earlier, like I don't really read a lot of things that have to do specifically with religion. Like if it's an element of a book, I'm totally fine with it, especially learning about other people's faiths. That is fine, but I don't usually read like Christian fiction or whatever. And I don't know if this would necessarily be called Christian fiction, but this is about a priest. You might be able to guess from the cover, that lives in Victoria, and it has to do with him finding his niece who is missing somewhere in the city. I also read it I read it when it came out. When did it come out? In 2014, yes. So it's been a while, so I don't remember all of the details. But the reason I picked this one is because Andrew is not only a novelist, he is also a performer. And he did a fringe show that lasted 12 hours, where he read the entire book out loud from cover to cover. So he would read for about 45 minutes. We'd have about a 15-minute break where there would be snacks or drinks in the lobby based on things that were in the book. So if he talked about a recipe in the book, which he does quite often because this character likes to bake his own stuff and that type of thing, there would be that in the lobby. Yeah, when the book came out, I obviously bought myself a copy from him and he signed it. Kathy, bless you for being at my whole reading, and congratulations on your own book, because that's when I also put out a book that year. And yeah, I just loved that experience of sitting in a very small theater and listening to Andrew read the entirety of his own book over a 12-hour period. It's just such a great experience. I should actually reread this. I remember really enjoying it. There were some twists to it that I remember enjoying. Ooh, that's just a whole line of swearing. That's awesome. But yeah, if I figured if I was going to give a cop-out answer of like, I don't know, I might as well like just talk about a book that not necessarily it's like the content of the book is like the one quintessential Canadian book in the world, but like my experience with the book is a very positive one. Yeah. So those were all of the questions. I think that I answered all the questions that popped up in the chat. Let me just scroll back to make sure I didn't ignore anybody outright, because I wouldn't want to do that. That seems rude. So if you have asked a question and I didn't answer it, I simply didn't see it and I apologize. I think that's it though. Yeah, so thank you for joining me for this. This was a very impromptu idea. I had like Sunday night and I was like, will anybody even show up? Who knows? Some people have, which is wonderful. Yeah. If you have any future questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments of this video once it's processed itself and it's on YouTube properly, because I'm just going to leave it up on YouTube. I never delete videos from my channel. Even though there's just that one video. For those of you who don't know this about my channel, there is one video that is infinitely more popular than any other video on my channel and always will be. And it's a video I made over 600 videos ago. It was my 50th video, and it was a blooper reel I put together from my previous videos. And I don't know what it was about learning how to speak to a camera that made me burp more often than I do usually and that I do now. But I burped a lot while I was making videos, so a lot of those burps made it into the blooper reel, so it was called the burp blooper reel. And the thing I didn't know at the time was that there is a paraphilia for burping. If you are unfamiliar with the term paraphilia, it means you are sexually turned on by that activity. So there's thousands upon thousands of views on that one video. And when it first was becoming popular, I had no idea why it was becoming popular. I was just like, people really love blooper reels. This is great. And then a friend on Facebook with a psychology degree was like, just so you know, this is a thing. I'm like, oh, okay. So it bums me out that the most popular video I'm likely to ever have has nothing to do with books. But it's not like I'm going to delete it. It's a part of my channel's history. It's there. So yes, thank you for joining me. That has been your story time for right now. Yeah. Yeah. Some of the comments I have definitely deleted, because I have no problem with people using my videos however they see fit. I just don't need to know about it if it's in a very personal way. I just don't. That's how I feel about that. It's perfectly okay. Again, I don't want to yuck anyone's yum. If that turns you on, I'm very happy for you. That is wonderful. I don't need to know about it. Especially when that wasn't the intent of the video in the first place. So that's fine. But yes, so that's story time. You can still find that video, obviously. Like I said, it's still out there. So if you ever want to see really young Kathy with super long hair, just not knowing what she's doing, and how to frame things. There's that. But that's why I've never made a blooper reel since then. I have like put little bloopery parts at the ends of videos. And there was once where it took me literally 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, I think, to finally say my intro properly. I just kept messing it up one day. So there is an unlisted video to that on whichever video that was. It was one of my weekly entertainment wrap-ups, I think. But it took me a good solid 4.5 minutes to get just the intro to my video done properly. Like the same intro formula I always use, like, hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly wrap up for September 7th through 16th, whatever the things are. And I read this many and watched this much and listened to this much. Like I just couldn't, for whatever reason, I think I just kept like saying the month wrong, or like just slight little words are wrong. And it's like, honestly, it goes on for like 4 minutes. And that one's unlisted just because it's not regular content, but it's listed in the description of whichever video that was. So that was fun. But yeah, if you ever have any other questions for me, feel free to hit me up on social media. Feel free to leave them in the comments of this video and I'll just answer them in the comments. And thank you for hanging out with me on this very strange weather Wednesday. I am going to figure out what I'm going to drink and read in my bathtub because it's Wednesday and that's what I do. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time. If you are free on Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that is when I do Friday reads. So I, myself and a couple other people will do a silent reading hour together. And yeah, that's always fun. It's just, it feels like you're in the same room with other people. Excellent. Excellent. I have no idea how many people watch that video because like it's such weird content. It's not regular content at all, but yeah. Sometimes my words don't work, and that's why I love editing. In any case, thank you very much for being here. I will talk to you next time.